You might remember when I previously mentioned that she has an world and folder for her in real life alters, and how there's some OCs that are supposed to represent alters and aren't included. Being specific, the OCs are Horn, Rage, Honeycomb, and Comfort. And seeing this event that portrays Rage made me truly confused because is supposed to mean then it is just an OC that is not linked to the real alter. It is just one more character part of her story. Does it represent another thing that is not alter, but she makes it seem like it is one? Does her real alter even made it? Also, kittydog has answered the guy's comment about her alters, and I've shown it in my other post. My mom has literally written down my alters since when I was 7 years old. This is a disorder caused by severe childhood trauma. I do not need to go into any more details than that. I believe psychedelics should not be demonized. Of course, it's not for everyone, and you must take safety precautions before even considering it. But I believe psychedelics can and should be used safely for therapeutic use. Using psychs in a safe environment has helped me process my trauma, which is why I use psychedelic symbolism and imagery in my art, not to glorify drug addiction. I highly recommend doing research on the risk versus benefits of psychs. Drug addiction needs to be taken seriously. While I'm upset that people are taking my drug-related art as glorifying addiction, I do think it's important to put better and proper warnings for my art related to drugs going forward. To clarify, it's not meant to glorify drug abuse. Before safety regarding this is extremely important. So about kittydog's lost media. Again, last time I talked about it, I forgot to mention about some stuff that wasn't been archived or found, so I'm doing it here. For First Time is a song was made in 2020 and produced by Float Motion that was deleted from Spotify and her music account. The reason is because of her not wanting to be associated with him anymore, and because he used to do it for fame. The only thing available from it now is a cover drawing. Following the list currently, these are 2 videos from her channel, Katie streamed previously, Katie Drama, They Are Lost. One of them was the introduction of the channel that had the blue version of Crystal and just explained that was the channel going to be used. The other one for video room, and she debunked drama in front of her computer. Now for the last one, there's a drawing of her OC's Horn and Rage in the first design, and they hugged each other. The post was an introduction to them and was posted on Twitter in 2020. Not sure if it was posted on other socials. This xenogender is akin to the gender and sex in the kittydog universe. It is based on biological gender fluidity. The kittydog universe is concepts of gender plus sex. The KD multiverse, which encapsulates both the timeline and void universes, has only one biological sex. It is sex fluid. You could call it meaning their genitalia doesn't have set bounds, nor do they have a history of gender roles in correlation to sex. However, there is the existence of femininity and masculinity, since the characters are born with a slight binary of hormone production in their brains. This, however, can be altered through time. Trans and cis characters in the KD universe differ from in real life people, since in real life to be trans your gender is not the same as your birth sex. However, in the kittydog universe, since there is no sex, gender switches are quite common. There are some cisgender fluid and non-binary characters. Being cis would mean that your genitalia will always correlate with the gender you are at the time of having that genitalia. For example, a cisgender fluid character, let's say Sensor Bar Dog, would only have a when he is male and only have a when she is female. Most gender fluid characters don't always have gender sex correlations. The concepts of cis and trans aren't used in conversions between the kittydog universe characters. They normally use more specific labels only referring to the gender identity with no reference to sex whatsoever, and consider a drastic change of that label to be a gender identity shift. For example, Boob, originally identified as female for most of the time growing up, then had a gender identity shift to male. It could be considered as being trans, but there is no reference to sex. Characters normally use pronouns that correlate with their genders, but not always. For example, Wafflecopter sometimes goes by she, her pronouns, but always identified as male. Realizing that I exhibit traits of OCPD, obsessive-compulsive personality disorder, was absolutely not on my 2026 bingo card. Feeling stupid because I'm a workaholic who can't describe what I can do to increase efficiency. Now I'm working on all of that. The awareness is a deep fresh of air, and I can give people and myself a better, more efficient version of me. Once I finish my current batch of commissions, there's going to be an overhaul on how I take commissions and work on them, so I can be more productive with what I can do. I'll be able to do much more personal work, songs and animations alongside my commission work, and I'm super proud of that. Like, sure, okay, yup, 10 years of not wanting to give myself rest so I can enter the picture-perfect flow state, so that every art piece I complete is executed to my own standards, and believing my way of doing things wired for my own mind is the right way, not out of fear. That bad things will happen if I don't, but because I genuinely feel it's the right way to be since it's produced good results for me, despite it inhibiting efficiency on completing projects, is actually like so totally not disordered thinking and just means I'm hardworking, bro. And I've realized I've kinda had this arrogance with how I operate and function as a human being. I thought, nah, how could I have the disorder that makes you a perfectionist at heart when I'm so not, and I don't care if there's messy lines or find beauty in the imperfections of art. But it's like I'm not a perfectionist in that way. I don't need the world to be neat and tidy and orderly in a sense one typically would feel, but rather what my brain seeks to achieve is the vibe, what I'm going for, right? Am I conveying what I want to convey in this piece? For my commissions, it even more so, because the variable of the perspective of the buyer, I draw quickly, 30 minutes on a piece, but I'd spend hours sort of getting the nebulous blob in my head to calculate what I need to do and how I can solve that problem, get those variables, quote unquote, right. It's like a subconscious, super intelligent calculator developed in me when I couldn't develop the words to describe, and now after doing research, I have the words. I have intuitive tactic expertise that chronically developed alongside my ability to communicate said expertise. With my unsaid expertise, I had no scaffolding to tell me what I could do to make my process more efficient. I just go, don't mess with the vibe, I need this exact vibe to get with my comms, and then realize it's just like a piece of code that's inefficient. That came with rituals that ate up my energy, checking every DM to see if there's an updated reference. Before starting the commission, weighing each commission by effort, trying to achieve the exact vibe someone wants in the picture, and at the end of the day, my buyers more often than not. love what I make, the results of many people loving my art. I am grateful to have buyers who are willing to pay and wait for me, but I could be doing so much more with my time and resources than just being blind to how my own mind works at the whims of the asynchronous mind. Feeling stupid because I'm a workaholic who can't describe what I can do to increase efficiency. Now I'm working on all of that. The awareness is a deep breath of fresh air, and I can give people and myself a better, more efficient version of me. Once I finish my current batch of comms, there's going to be an overhaul on how I take comms and work on them, so I can be more productive with what I can do. I'll be able to do much more personal work, songs and animations alongside my commission work, and I'm super proud of that. I'd assume the reason why their breakup was sudden was because of these reasons I've thought of based on Hermo and Kittydog's relationship. Another yap fest, by the way. Kittydog realized how her and Hermo got together. This refers to how Hermo had sex with Kittydog under the influence. Maybe she realized that having sex with psychedelics impaired people and not very ethical and sometimes illegal. Kittydog had something on the side with Lurke/Leneri without telling Hermo. I emphasize that last part because I, for a fact, know Hermo has no, and Lurke moved very fast. There had to be something at least right after Kittydog and Hermo broke up. Hermo was just a shit guy. Hermo was just someone who was broken. He craved love, acceptance, and attention. I feel for him, as he'd come from a not-so-good place and low-key had shitty friends and people around him. However, he was an asshole. He was impulsive, irresponsible, and never took up for his actions and instead would blame others and later his mental disabilities that Kittydog diagnosed. He's referring to his mental age, not actual age, in this screenshot. He is 18. A person like him can become draining, so I'd be a good reason to break it off. Of course, I don't see any of this trying to paint Hermo in a bad light. However, he and Kittydog's relationship would not have been protected for as long as it was. I wish someone intervened much earlier, rather than having all friends give constant support. If their unhealthy relationship, Hermo needed help, and he could have helped so much if he wasn't bound onto a relationship with Kittydog. He had so much potential and was failed by the people around him. He was so impressionable and went from a genuinely decent person to a hypersexual, oversupportive, and even more impulsive freak. And as for Kittydog, her origins have made her somewhat of a lost cause. I wish she kept her mindset of improvement and stuck to it, instead of pretending to change and improve. She is too dependent on her partners, whether romantic or sexual, and honestly needs anything but to be married at the moment. I'm sorry for them. Hi, I know this post about the LSD is kind of old, but I'd like to reply to it since I've been seeing a lot about the psychedelic drugs, and Hermo sort of being some sort of like, not victim, but toy for Kittydog. I don't know, I don't want to side with anyone, but I used to be in a group chat with Kittydog, Hermo, and a few others. Kittydog never really admitted to liking Hermo when she was 17, and Hermo seemed to be obsessed with her. Hermo was so desperate for Kittydog's love that he would gravitate towards people who had the same sort of vibe of her, but would still always have his eyes set on that prize. At some point around the falling out of the group chat, Kittydog, Hermo, and some other dude, I forgot his name, went out to an Airbnb to film a music video for a collab Kittydog recently at the time did. I forgot where exactly or who I heard it from, but it was probably Kittydog or Hermo that Kittydog tried LSD for the first time, and her and Hermo had sex. Her and him having sex wasn't surprising, as she admitted that she'd fuck anybody in the midst of a rejection to her. Well, always trying to explain why things happen and how they happen and how everyone in one of the same. This is also where she first stated talking of who found, see here, like Kittydog's ex, Draffles, I can't read that, and his group, which estranged Hermo and called him some mean names for having sex with someone while they're under the influence. By the way, Kittydog is known to have sex with people while she's under the influence and then dumping them months later, cough cough, flow motion. I also noticed, since I'm a lurker of Kittydog as a whole since that group chat, the Kittydog and Hermo didn't have a very good relationship at all. In streams, she would tell him to shut the fuck up, or just seemingly mildly annoyed with him at times. They also didn't have all harmony when solving problems together, as I have personally witnessed. I even told Kittydog that she needed to find someone better. That's all I really have on that. Sorry for being a yapper. Too long didn't read. Hermo had sex with Kittydog while she was under the influence of LSD. Hermo and Kittydog had a terrible relationship that obviously went up into flames, similar to her sexual relationship with another YouTuber. It appears some people have been confusing info for my alter sonas and my in-real-life alters. Hopefully this will clear up confusion. In real life, my name is Zola, my sona is Crystal. Crystal is based of the entirety of my real-life me, but is not 100% me. Yes, I sometimes use her to represent me in my life, but she's mainly the fictional character. So as whole catch-all name, Zola, our in-real-life alters, should be distinguished from the same way as Zola and Crystal are distinct. Zola/Kittydog system contains 8 alters in real life: Hexy, Cyro, Plant, Amity, Frack, Comet, Logi, and Blunt. Crystal's system contains 15 alters: Honeycomb, Rage, Prime Rose, Horn, Seedling, Comfort, Fractal, Comet, Logi, Blunt, Night, Row, 6, 9, Tired Dog, Meowbark. Please keep this in mind, so I know when you're referring to the character and not the in-real-life alter. Another side note is we may change names along with sometimes alters we've had come out of dormancy, really attached to a character, such as the Amity and Comfort Crystal, but otherwise this is a current information. Hello, my therapist from 2020-2022 has worked with DID systems specifically. That's not the main thing he worked with me, but he also had that under his belt. We were in the process of getting a diagnosis. Unfortunately, I was unable to finish the process because I had to move and no longer could afford therapy or a psychiatrist. Back in 2021, I was very open online about any progression on my mental health, but now I keep new info about it private for safety because random people on the internet cannot diagnose me based on how I act or symptoms. That stuff should be kept within me, close friends and professionals, even though I'm at a standstill. I have somewhat of a different view overall than I did when initially writing this bulletin. To be honest, I forgot it existed, and I'm probably going to private it soon because it's outdated. OCDD. We are keeping certain stuff about it more closed off from the public, but a few things I can say about it are alters share memories, plus are okay with being referred to as whole Zola, but we still have separation, consciousness, identity, perspective, and dissociation. Probably not everyone with OCDD will be the same way, but that's a bit on how my experience is.